we good? Oh, good. Okay. Let's see. Oh, I had them dim the lights a little bit. Isn't that nice? Okay, so we are back in consort, relationship, sexuality, anything along those lines, questions. Although you can actually ask whatever you want. But this just seems to be where the theme went. We went from the cult, the anti-sex cult, and then we went into like Elon Musk and politics. And now we are at consort. And, you know, it is an intuitive journey. And people often ask, like, how do you do it, Nicole? Like, how do you have this kind of sexuality? The same way I do my talks. So you can see I'm following a thread. I have no idea. But I did get some really beautiful questions. I got, oh, there was more. Just a minute. I'm going to actually just pull it from my IG, if that's okay. Because the question was so beautiful and the heart that was asking it was so beautiful, that I really like to, I don't know, just demonstrate human beauty in primary interactions, as there isn't that much of it on social media today. I mean, I'm fortunate there is, in my thread has a great deal of it, but you know, I really appreciate it. Sometimes I'll read these questions and I'll be so moved. How it'll feel in my heart is I would do anything for this person to help them find a solution for where they are, because it is clear to me that they're giving everything they have. And anybody who gives everything they have, I'll always do my best to meet them, you know, but like, don't do what people can do for themselves kind of thing. So when you, that place that you feel it. And so this is how it felt to me. This may not be true, but you know, I like that place where people are kind of trembling, you know, that, and then right, you know, right there, that's where I like to meet. That's that place of intimacy, right? So, oh, I can read it. Yeah. So it says, the question itself is, okay. My friends call the man I'm with a narcissist. I don't use labels because it limits perception and true connection, but he displays those tendencies for a good reason. His childhood was beyond fucked. Yeah, yet he still stands in his beauty and masculine. However, I feel so diminished from his lies and rage. Oh, the beginning of the question was, I went so deep into your talk today, being able to see so much entitlement and lack of Eros in my decisions. I would so appreciate it if you could talk about boundaries in your upcoming talk today, how you define boundaries in this practice of Eros. I have no problem putting what's keeping me from intimacy on the chopping block, but I'm still not aware of the line to honor self-love. Brilliant question. It's just, you can, I don't know if all of you can feel how to me, how much it feels like she's been working the question. It's just, and so it's kind of like raw and fresh and open. And so she doesn't come here with any preconceived ideas. I am with a man I love dearly, and I see him and what desires acceptance. At the same time, he compulsively lies about small and big things. Your post on lying really illuminates so much. What about my desires? As I write that, it sounds so stiff and selfish. And so first thing I want to say is it's not stiff and selfish, not at all in any way. Your desires are vital. I mean, it's what the whole thing runs on, is your desire. You know, the aim is to have it be that your desire and his desire are the same desire. And that desire is for liberation. And then when you have that, you have a big enough pot to put everything in and to give meaning to everything. So, you know, I put up this post about, wow, it was big deal on Facebook. It wasn't as big a deal on Instagram. Usually things are the reverse, but so I put up this post about the idea of sacred sexuality. And so I'm going to answer your questions somewhat through this, if I might. And that is, you know, this idea of sacred sexuality, and that we should have men honoring us, and that maybe just that. You know, somebody wrote to me and said, If you, it's a universal law that if you have sex with someone with low self-esteem, that means you have low self-esteem. And it's like, no, the Dalai Lama talks to people with low self-esteem. It actually means the Dalai Lama is beyond self-esteem. To be, there's a place in karma beyond self-esteem. So, so the question has to be, for me to answer this, and I'm just going to answer it from my perspective, assuming I know your answer. And if it's different, please tell me. But because you don't feel to me like somebody who's looking for the best of a finite world. And see, most of the arguments I get from people are, I have found the best of a finite world. What do I do? There's almost an anger at me that I'm saying, do all of these things, right? And so my aim in my response is going to be to get you into the infinite world. And so it's going to be a different set of conditions. And often where people get confused is they apply rules for a finite game to an infinite aim, because it's all things we let go in the infinite game. So for example, I distinguish it between Mahayana and Vajrayana, because once you hit Vajrayana, it's anything goes. So in practice, for example, everything that you did to be successful in Mahayana, everything. And we'll say everything you did to be successful in finite, everything you did to be successful, period. Because once you hit Vajrayana, you're never successful again. Get ready to give it up. But everything that you did is what you're going to throw into the pot, if that makes sense. You are going to give it all up at this point. So say, you practiced great restraint and renunciation, and say you were chaste, in chaste, in your way, or say that you learned to practice right or nonviolent communication. All of these things, you learn to practice boundaries and self-care. All of these things, they will get you to the best of the finite game. And you just have to know they won't get you any further. Rules will never get you into the infinite. So then you have to look at, like, what do I really want? And this is where I'm presuming that you want an infinite game, because it sounds to me like that's what you keep accidentally angling for against the narrative of the culture, which is a finite narrative. And so you're going to be crazy. Again, I have this friend, Joey, on Instagram, and she's crazy because she's an infinite player in a finite world, wondering why she's always losing a finite game. Well, you have a much harder time winning it eventually. So this is where in the prisoner's dilemma, the first 100 plays between these two people, right? The person who isn't altruistic wins. The selfish or greedy person wins. And then after 100, exponentially, the altruistic person wins. In the first 100 plays, the crazy Vajrayana, crazy wisdom person, the crazy Eros person loses. But then exponentially, they start winning, because even though you look like a mess as you're being not manufactured or not contrived, and everybody else is kind of following this script. It's very easy, relatively, but they're following the script. And the script is, at the top of it, it would say dark something, or like the script would be how to look good under all conditions. And then it would be just, all of the things that you do to look compassionate here, or worry about your sisters, or whatever it is, do those things. Whatever it is, this is what I have come to believe. No matter what you do on the surface, no matter what you do, 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 that original self is never touched until you open the gate of the original self. Then that original self stays locked behind those gates until you have them come out. The only thing that will have them come out, though, is to say, I've got your back 100%. You're saying this to yourself. I've got your back 100%, and we are going to look a little foolish often, because you're going to be bringing out your greed, hatred, delusion. You're going to bring those things out, because the reason that they're so concentrated and so out of control is that they haven't been fed. They've been locked in a basement for a long period of time, and you have to bring them out for them to run the karma, for them to integrate into you so that you're a whole person. But as I said, you will look not as great on the road there, but at a certain point, you're going to have every single tool of human existence at your disposal. And so you will be able to arise in an uncontrived, natural, true to you way, irrespective of the conditions, in a way that has no script whatsoever. So you'll just know that what you're doing is right. That fundamental sense of rightness will be yours. That's the promise of, the spontaneous path, we'll say. So then we're talking about, what do you do? What do you do when you're in love with this man? You have compassion. And by the way, one thing that I would say is you don't have to make excuses for why he lies. He lies because he lies. That's just part of his being. And there's a great scene in this film called My Concubine, where he says, you just love me for my money. And she says, no, I love you with your money, meaning not in spite of it and not because of it, but it's part of who you are. And so you don't love him because he lies or in spite of the fact he lies. You love him including the fact that he's a liar. That makes up, or I wouldn't say is a liar, that he lies. That is the terrain and the makeup of who this human is. So dear God, what do you do with that? Well, I can tell you this great story. I thought about it for you. Oh, remind me, I want to talk about Vajra Yogini, okay, after this. So, sorry. So here's my story. What was I talking about? Oh, the liar story. Okay, so I was dating this guy. And this guy was a compulsive liar. And I was out of my mind. I was crazy. I am a Virgo. I am like, you can do anything, just don't lie to me. And so I'm dating this guy. And he happened to be a very good stroker. So I could kind of justify it in my head. He's such a good liar. I'm willing to put up with the fact that he's a liar. And everyone had told me he was a liar. And he really, he really was. I only know there's one other woman on the planet who lies as much as this guy, like just lies. And so he drove me crazy. And I lived with him and Ray. And one time, so Ray took me to this class, and the class he took me to, they had you do these ridiculous or crazy things, like steal something in that, in the house of a person you live with that's their favorite thing, or you were really beginning to play with how we work with possessiveness. So we get home, and Ray had been a person who grew up in the Depression. And he was always paranoid that we would run out of toilet paper. So Ray hid toilet paper everywhere in the house. It was just this really weird thing. Like you'd just open a closet and there'd be like toilet paper in one of the pockets of a jacket. Like but I knew where it all was. So Ray was in his room, and I just went and got all the toilet paper and I hid it. And then there were like 13 of us who lived here, so you didn't know who it was. So all of us are, hanging out, and you just hear Ray fuming. He's crazy. who took the toilet paper? And then you could tell he was going from room to room to room to room to find the toilet paper. And then and I'm just sitting there, and part of me is trembling, but part of me is entertained. Part of me feels like a bad girl who's going to get caught. What if I get kicked out? I haven't really heard him this mad before. All of these things are going on, and I'm going crazy. And then all of a sudden it hit me. Oh my God, I'm turned on. Like, because that's not, I have my things that I do, but that kind of thing is not one of my things. I'm not a rule breaker in that kind. And so I'm like in the garage, wherever I hit it. And I'm like, ah. And the guy that I'm dating comes out, and then he just sees how turned on I am. And he goes, it's fun, isn't it? And I said, excuse me? And he said, you're a lot more fun than Ray. I was like, oh my God. And I just had this moment of really getting the power of the trickster and just delighting in the fact that he had me just on my toes 24 hours a day. I mean, it was, he and I had a few more stories I won't tell, but I can tell you that something shifted in me in that moment because, see, I had a bottom line. You can do anything, but you can't lie. If you lie, I will disconnect from you. Well, my primary, tenet is stay connected no matter what. And it was no matter what, except for that. And so I had to change it. Then all of a sudden, I had to turn on to the fact that this guy was a liar. And then it was like, okay, this is really sexy. I never know where I'm at. And then you realize how boring most conversation is where people say that they're telling the truth. And then I realized this man was actually telling more truth than people who were spitting more truthful facts, if that makes sense. He was just living in play consciousness and constant, and how much attention it took. So anyway, that my suggestion, now mind you, I'm going to give you finite rules and infinite rules, because in finite rules, leave that guy. No matter what, leave him. There's a book called Boundaries by Henry Cloud. Buy that book. Hang out with your girlfriends. Do not ever let anybody treat you like that again. Those are the finite rules. The infinite rules are turn on. Like, don't turn on in spite of the lying. Turn on to it. See what you can do. See how you can begin to eroticize it. See if, this is what I would do, but you don't have to. This is an advanced practice, but if I were, one of the things I do love to do is say, tell me all the lies you've ever told me while I'm making out with somebody. And because it's best to do when you're making out, because your arousal is high. And so when your arousal is high, your filter for good and bad, right and wrong are gone. And you're like, wait a minute, you did that. And you are not getting out of it in that moment. And, just tell me the next one, tell me the next one. And they're in arousal, so they're more likely to tell you the next one. And then you begin to build a bond inside of this lying territory is kind of the best I can explain it. And then it's just this sexy place of this like this, insidious trickster, duplicitous trickster guy who always lies to you, and you who's always at his mercy, never knowing what the truth is. And then you can begin to play with those, and then you can begin to play with being the one who extracts it. I dated this guy once, and we, in the height of a makeout, this is, I don't know. These are high intensity experiences. I just want to say, as per usual, in fact, this should be in the open air. Like, we don't recommend this at home, but so I'm making out with this guy, and he tells me that he's thought about fucking my best friend. He's like, ooh, I was just feeling what it would be like to fuck her, and he had never told me before that he had fantasies about other women. And then I made the grave error that turned out to be the opposite of a grave error, I want to say. And I said, has this happened before? This is while we're having sex. And he was like, yes. And you could feel that bad little boy and confession energy. And then you could feel it was almost like a mother, like, has this happened before? Like, while we're having sex. And then I said, I want you to tell me every single time you've ever thought about any woman. And then like that became part of it. And that's the aim. The aim is to open it all up so that all of it can be in this experience of connection. And like lying isn't bad. The shame he feels about it or the confusion you feel about it is what's bad. That none of these things are good or bad or right or wrong in and of themselves. If you can turn on to it, it's good. It's just that simple. We often used to say when we would talk about if she's turned on, you can do no wrong. And if she's turned off, you can do no right. And that's kind of the truth about everything. If you're turned on, there is no wrong. That's just not everything hits a little bit differently. So that's my answer for you. And if you want the finite version, I'm happy to give it to you. And the book is called Boundaries by Henry Cloud. And he has a new book out too. So we have a whole program for each side of the line that you might want to play on. Okay, how's that? Oh yes, I want to tell my Vajrayogini story. Because, let me see. One of the questions, I can't remember what it was. Oh, here it is. Okay, I'll see if I can find it. Sorry. So one of the questions that I saw was around it was around like obsession and kind of getting stuck in those places of obsession. And so I thought I would tell this other story. And that is, I think it's just in my Instagram, but I think I didn't download this one. Okay. So I was profoundly obsessed, profoundly obsessed. And for a good period of time. Why? Because I'm an excellent practitioner, that's why. And because the aim is to make volatile fixed energy. And so when you make volatile sexual energies, they're like free radicals has a negative connotation, but I like the expression free radicals. But if you took all of your pool of sexual energy before you learned how to actually steer it, it just goes where it goes and locks on. It goes like to the places often of greatest need. It just locks on. And so as you grow in your own practice, your desire is profoundly volatile and grippy, usually very grippy. And mine was no different. And so I was just I was enslaved to my own obsession. And I do want to say I don't think I'll ever be obsessed again. And that's a beautiful and a sad thing. I actually remember the day I was sitting and it hit me. I will never be addicted to anything again. It was just so clear because I learned the trick to unvelcro is the only way, that pair bonding thing. But then you lose the thrill of being obsessed. So I do my best. I have my little experiences, but I don't think I'll ever be obsessed in that way again. But where everything was just a thrash in relation to, there was not a minute that this was not occurring. And I've had many obsessions. I'm a very obsessive person. There are people who are angry, that's their primary thing, and people who are delusional, that's their primary thing, or sort of checked out. And then there are people who are obsessive, and that's their primary thing. That's mine. And so crazy. And so then I had this funny dream that I was walking this corridor, and on the corridor, he he was there, and I was like, finally, you're in my corridor, now I'm going to have you. And then there was something luring me behind him, and I was like, no, I'm not going anywhere. I'm finally here. We're here. And then but the lure was so great. It was so great that I couldn't resist it. It was this magnet that was pulling me. And then I looked at him, and I was devastated because I realized he was the door, and that the only thing I had to do was keep walking to the source, and that he was a loving enough door that he didn't pretend to be the source. That's a very wise door, very difficult position to be. So all of a sudden I feel this pull. I'm just going out of my mind. And then I move past him, and I move toward the pull, and behind him is this deity Vajrayogini. That she's this red deity with this beautiful canopy, and just and just pulsing sexuality. I mean, that's my home, and just pulsing nipples and just everything. And so it was as if she had put these various people in front of her until I was ready to meet her directly. And I remember the look of looking back to him and just being like, oh God, this is hard. It's hard to keep going past you. And then I was also scared I was going to hurt him. And I remember his look like, no, this is how I love you. How I love you was being here in order to get you past me to her. So then, but that didn't end my obsession. And I was chanting, and I have this really beautiful little temple, and I was chanting down there, and I chanted Krula Krule. Anyway, she's the sort of love, blink, 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 blink. And all of a sudden, I'm just chanting, and she arises. And basically in the way you would want the man you're in love with to say, like I just heard in my, like, give it to me, give it to me. And I just let all of that obsession, that sex, that love, that yearning, that passion just, and then there was this understanding, like, where do you think that came from? It's like, and then I got the thing that I was actually looking for, because that we're actually looking for that. There's just filters that we have of our own preferences on top of that field. And sometimes, those filters will take us hostage, and be like, you're right, it is me. And that's where you have the diminishing returns, where it's not what's behind, And so anyway, that's the best way I know to make it through obsession. And that's to keep going all the way to the source and let it have you. And then all of a sudden you have what you've been working for all this time. It's what makes the work of obsession worthwhile at the end. Okay, that was good. And oh yes, yep, and that is, so the other thing that I want to say, so one of the hardest thing for women, what I saw in a lot of the comments is men have been so hungry. We really created this insane system where men are so hungry that from hunger they reach. And from that reaching, they made it that women don't have to work. And from not having to work, they don't know how to enter the erotic room. And because the erotic room is, as I said, the rules are very different. They are based on what you offer. And, in the finite world, your withholding is what makes you a turn on, like you can't get that girl kind of thing. That makes her hot. It makes her so boring in the erotic room, because the erotic room is who can offer the most with the most play, who can stay in flight, how do you do that, who can add to the arousal in new and interesting ways, who can stay with it is really where the fun begins, right? Who can express it in a way that makes every part of your body aroused. You're playing with adults now. You aren't playing with children. And so in the adult room, the skill set is seen is every single way that you can keep the arousal moving, and all of the things that we're trained to do, right? Everything that the locking down so that you look like you're not affected, like like the women's thing seems to be never let them see you sweat or something, or have them see you totally desperate. Those are like the two options for women, but don't ever let them see you as a fount of arousal that has entered the room in order to pour and activate unrestricted arousal into that experience, and then play and tug with and pull every single thread that you possibly can to manifest the turn on. And the person, Ray used to say, in the arousal room, the person with the least rules wins. Person with the least rules. So you have to think about all of this. Although I will say, your rules can be very sexy, like we just talked about with the guy who lies. That can be very sexy. Or you're bringing all of your rules from the finite or Mahayana world into the Vajrayana world, right? So you were told always to look like an empowered woman who never does XYZ with men, or whatever it is, or like really practice being responsible and loving your husband, or whatever those things are that you knew were freaking lies. You knew it. Just that last leg of the finite journey is proving that you can pretend really well. It's you have to go through it. It's just like, what are those called? General studies. What is it that you take at the beginning of university? Anyway, whatever they're called is what they're called. So, so you know how you have to take like English 101, math, it's like that. This goes in there because, as you fully open your arousal, you are at times going to have to, be somewhat concealed. So you have to show that you can pretend for a long period of time in order to look like you were ethical. And but the thing is, there are those of us who are just like, oh, this class sucks. I'm doing my best here, but this is really terrible. I did a lot of mine in Los Angeles, and it was just appalling. And whatever. So then but all of those things that you learned, those are the rules that you're going to break. And then, so those are the things that you have to figure out how to eroticize. For example, if you finally learned how to not look desperate, right? But you managed to learn how to not look desperate. Your desperation never went anywhere. So then what you learn when you enter the erotic room is you bring that desperation in there. You take off any mask. You are as naked as you can possibly be. And that is the turn on. Does that make sense? Or, you learned how to hold your boundaries. This is also a great one because your boundaries are so boring in the erotic room. I mean, that is, nothing kills Eros like a boundary, which doesn't mean that you don't follow the natural boundaries. See, that's the thing. There are natural boundaries. There are moments where it says, just where it is clear, take your finger off the clit now. Take your finger off the clit now. So the reason that you're releasing any of these artificial man-made contrivances is so that you can actually play with the real rhythms, the real truths that are there, so that the deeper, more primal experience can come through. And I was just talking to a friend of mine about this because they were saying, it seems like she wants this, but I think she wants this. And I was like, probably all of it. That's you are playing a 100-string instrument, and you're going to be plucking all of the strings, and they will all arise in full with all of their own expressions. So it's not like she just wants to be a subservient little brat, and then it's like, no, she wants to be a mean mommy. Yes, all of it, all of that is in us. And so there's that place where it's just been stuck down there in a really tight ball and it can't come out in full expression, right? And then, see, that's what we call anxiety. So, all of the anxiety diagnoses, that's what it is. It's waiting to come out in full in all of its expressions, naturally arising according to how karma plays it in the moment. And according to how connected karma plays it, right? So I have my own expressions as I move through my house alone, and then say my consort is there. There's a collision of another way that it comes to express, right? And so then you have like that much more of a range to play with and experience, and that's what somebody said, I think what Nicole's saying is the Joseph Campbell saying, it's not more meaning we're looking for, it's more in a feeling of aliveness. And I do feel that, without question. In fact, I think aliveness bestows meaning, but it's also that feeling of aliveness is a result of how far the spectrum of expression is permitted to go in terms of who you are. And so, ultimately, we all self-liberate in the fullest. What does self-liberate in the fullest mean? It means you become the totality itself. And so then that means that all expressions, all potential is open to expression, whatever wants to express according to the need of the times. So there's just no better place to, I believe strongly, there's no better place to experiment with that than in the erotic room, because how far do your expressions go elsewhere, and who really cares? I mean, like who can't handle, master, deal with things outside of the erotic room, right? It's like, it's child's play, whatever it is, it's child's play. You enter the erotic room and you're dealing with some really serious stuff. All of the stuff that, the Bible is written. No, the Bible wasn't written to do this. That human beings mistranslated the Bible to mean has to do with sexuality. It's, the Bible is used primarily to regulate sexuality on the planet, because that's where all the good stuff happens. That's where all the stuff happens. That's where people get free. So anyway, that's how you make it through obsession. Let me see. Jessica, I've been so loving your talks. I had a question I would love to be addressed to dive deeper in my process. The experience I have is I don't know how to vet for sexual partners. For 50 years, when I open and my hunger is alive, they leave. So there is something I'm not seeing. When I'm in flight, they're gone. When I'm bound in relationship, I always lose my turn on after a time. That is such a great question. So yeah, that's a truism. That's just, I mean, like, that's just true. And so I will say, my guess, this is just my guess. I said this on one of these talks. In a sense, having Eros is like having positive diabetes, in that you have to treat it every day. And being in flight, being profoundly turned on, telling the freaking truth, these things that happen in this place, make life in a finite world challenging. Now, I look at it like that's the video game. Not everyone's loving Ye right now, but he's saved my life a few times. And one of them was when he said, I chose the level 10 video game. I don't know why. It's not like it's the most brilliant line ever, but I can tell you, when he gave me that context, I was like, okay, I got it. That's what this is. And so there's a way, oh my gosh, life in samsara has its own challenges, but then to be outside of samsara and not just live in a cave, interacting with samsara as a person who has a field of non-samsara, it's challenging. So you have to make that the video game. You have to make it do. How do I get through this? And now you have these 3D glasses on. And the worst part, especially if you do it in Eros, is you can see every person's level of turn on. You can see everything they're turned on to. You can just see it. It's just apparent. It's just like a screen goes up in front of them, and then you can see all of their compensations and lies over it. And you have to be like, how's the soup today? You have to act like you can't see it or interact with it. And, there are all of these artificial boundaries that you have to act with. So anyway, so I say all of that to say, everything you're describing is real. That is real. A person in flight has more challenges in terms of connection. But I will say there are 2% of the people on the planet who you will have no difficulties with. And so Topeka and I always say, find your kind. Your kind does exist. And that I will say that this was going to be my diagnosis this is my Instagram diagnosis of your situation. I really don't know, but I'll tell you what I think it could be. And that is, you can't try to accommodate samsara, the freedom of a non-samsaric being. So I'll put that differently. You can't accommodate a finite world and live free at the same time, because what happens is you send out a conflicted signal. You send out a signal of, I will sell my soul for a compliment, a kiss, whatever it is, and I want to be free. And so what happens is you don't attract either person. You don't hold either person. So the people who probably could be with you, the people who like to live in higher states of arousal, the people who like to live free and connected, they can't, your signal is probably imperceptible to a certain extent. You have to take everything that you have invested over here in finite appeasing or compensation or contrivance, all of the energies that are employed there, you have to bring those all the way over here. And that's the risk. That's why people don't do it. People try to straddle both worlds and look acceptable and have true intimacy. And it's impossible to have both. You cannot compromise yourself and have intimacy, period. More importantly, you can't compromise yourself and meet the people who don't see you as a compromised being. And so as a compromised being, what that means is that you have agreed that it's okay to live in lower states of arousal, to live out of flight, right? You agree, for these reasons, I would be willing to lose my flight. Well, the people who are really free will have made the crossover to say, there is nothing you can do. There's nothing. There is nothing you can give me. There's nothing you can threaten me with. There's nothing you can take from me. There's nothing you can do, no matter what. No matter what. I am 100%, no matter what, I'm staying in flight, right? Those are the people who could play with you. But until you make that, you are not jumped into the club. You don't make it through the hazing. You're just out there in the compromised, appeasing world with diminishing returns. And that's what I thought was so brilliant about your question, is because you nailed it. No matter what you get, and this is one of the definitions of suffering. No matter what you get in samsara, no matter what it is, it has diminishing returns. You habituate. You lose gratification. And the anxiety is the clarity that I got it. It's going downhill from here, from now on. And so you grip tighter even. That's the crazy thing. You grip tighter. And then as you grip, you squeeze, and then you squeeze out all of the arousal and all of the life force until you go down. And then that's why Samsara, the finite world, keeps selling you novelty. And that's why they keep repackaging things, because the only way to activate any kind of arousal is novelty, 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 novelty. That's why we have a consumption-based society. You keep, or disposable, however you want to put it. You have to keep getting new things. You have to have acquisition, and you have to get new positions. You have to get new clothes. You have to get a new house. You have to get a better car. You have to keep getting these things and pretend raising the bar on the merry-go-round. See, it really just goes like this, but it feels like you're getting something. No, you aren't getting shit. You're just nothing. And so then, you know, it can happen lifetimes of until you realize it. That's the thing. It's like, you know, that moment of like, wait a minute. Every single time I've done this before, I've said, this is the one, this is the time. And every single time it's had diminishing returns. It may not have ended, you know what I mean? It's like, you might be those two prize fighters that are just clinging to each other. That, you know, that's the long-term marriage kind of thing. It may not, but it ends, it dies. It has to, because it doesn't have an infinite source. It's running on limited resources. So that's just the nature of it. And so there may just come the point where you say like, oh my God, I'm not going to do it that way again. That's not going to work. And, you know, that's part of why I have agreed with myself. You know, I always debate how much I want to say, what I want to say. But because I've seen, you know, people don't understand that there's an alternative that isn't, see, like even freaking polyamory and I don't even know, what else do you call those things? Ethical non-monogamy, open relationships, all of those are still in the finite world, because it's like there's monogamy against polyamory or non-monogamy, right? But it's like, no, there is a freedom that has no opposite. And that's where you want to live. And then you're profoundly ethical, but you're ethical to Dharma, not to man-made rules or ideas. And so that's where you, in my mind, where you want to get. That's the only place to get to. It doesn't matter how you reconfigure the 15,000 versions of relationship. It does not matter. It doesn't matter if it's sex at dawn. None of those things matter. They're fake. They're just repackaged. What matters is you get free. And then the Dharma itself, you'll be talking to Vajra Yogini yourself, Vajra Yogini herself. Lama Mike doesn't like when I say Vajra. Okay, so that's too much information for you. So you'll be talking to her yourself, and she'll say, "See this feeling of bliss that I'm pumping into your body, the feeling that you were looking for inside of all of those finite realities. I'm going to keep pumping it into your body. You will live in this feeling that you're immune to the suffering of the world other than to help with it. So you will live in this permanent state of bliss that feels like the height of climax at all times. That will be your home. The only thing you have to do is just do what I simply instruct you to do. I'm going to show you how to stay in flight. I'm going to show you how to keep the arousal up. And I'm just going to move you. You'll be able to feel where to move. Just move there. And I promise you, when you get there, the bliss will be there. So all of those things that you wanted them because you thought they would lead you to bliss. I'm going to start you out at bliss, and then I'm going to just keep leading you into the places where I can continue to inject bliss into you. You're going to have to leave all of your head ideas behind. You're going to have to just simply be moved by this state of being. Now this, Joseph Campbell was studying Tantric Buddhism, and this is where he got follow your bliss, because in Buddhism, that's one of the one of the visceral experiences you have is bliss. And that's really the instruction. You follow the bliss. But it doesn't make sense to people, because what they're hearing is you follow the next commodified, manufactured idea of what will bring you bliss. No, she starts you at bliss. All you have to do is listen. Somebody asked me how you do creativity. All you have to do is listen. Then you just follow. But here's the really cool thing, I think. I just think you have to know, I am so in love with this path. I just say it's so great. Just today, I was doing my horse breath, and so I was doing my horse breath and my taras at the same time. And I was just like, usually when I enter the third round of taras, I'm asking for things, and today I was like, I'm not even going to ask for anything. I just want to say thank you. This is amazing how this works, because this is how it works. She invariably, we'll just say Vajrayogini, but you can make it Eros, which is usually what I make it. You can make it whatever you want. But you're already in the state of bliss as you're doing your practices, whatever they are. And then you'll be asked to move in a direction. And then what happens? Usually for people when you're asked to move in any direction at all. Resistance. Yeah, the resistance will come up. And so the resistance will come up, and most people view that as a negative thing. That is the sign of what you'll get to exhaust or dissolve if you move in that direction. Whatever the voices are, I can't do that, I'll look bad, people will know this about me, whatever it is. So that's your vanity that has you gripped, right? Or, they'll see how desperate I am. All of the things they are, we all have all of them, by the way, if that helps anybody. So the instruction will come, move in this direction and do this. And then you'll hear that's insanity. There's no way I could ever do that. That's usually what I hear. And then, but one thing I do have is a very strong relationship with that energy. And I think I've proven my fidelity. My friend Changwal will say, he's proven to the dakinis that he will give his life. I think I have too, I think, we work it every day, but I have been asked to go in absolutely crazy directions and gone. And then, oh my gosh, not only do I get my daily dose of bliss, but those pieces that would have blocked me dissolve. And it's like, why wouldn't I have gone? Even though that looks so crazy, they all look crazy. So is there an Instagram one, or should I?
We got one from Caravan.
Great.
How do you think the dynamic of surrender and devotion work in modern relationships where people are used to being more independent?
Say that one more time.
How do you think the dynamic of surrender and devotion work in modern relationships where people are used to being more independent?
Well, very much how I just said. So because really what you're playing with is a magnetized bliss that's strong enough to pull you through your various, we'll call them egoic expressions, your various expressions of tumescence, right? And so, in the West, independence is one of those egoic expressions. And, most people never look at what their independence is. Their independence tends to be fear and hurt. It tends to be, nobody was there for me when I needed, so I'm going to develop an identity that doesn't need people. It's a lie. Somebody was so dependent that they got hyper independent. And, but we are profoundly interdependent people. And so what you discover is that the trick of the erotic world is that everything in you is going to, when you get a certain point of bliss, want to grab yours and take it away. And what happens then? Does anyone know?
Bliss diminishes.
You enter the realm of diminishing returns. This one time I wrote this guy, whatever. The punchline was, you can have everything you want, provided you're willing to let it go. Because that's how it works. So if you're holding on to it, you've already killed it. It's dead. It's over, period. So the thing is, you want to do that. And that's where, so that's just couple independence, if that makes sense. Right? We used to have these guys who would come here and they would act like they were so loving and philanthropic, but really they were just looking for hostages. They just wanted to like take some woman away. But they didn't realize, oh, outside of the interdependent field of dakinis, all of her power goes down. And so it's not good for anyone. It's like taking a mermaid, you just don't do it. Don't do it. But we're profoundly interdependent. So everything that you discover in Eros is a tightrope. Everything. So you're not codependent, you're not independent, you're interdependent. But then you discover the bliss only happens in interdependence. The addiction, the holding, the grasping, the yearning, the aching, the begging, all of those can happen outside of the interdependence, right? The things that pass for love, that are attachment, or like intoxication, or I've got to have it, whatever that is, all of that, that is not in the interdependence. And so the solution is to sink into the interdependence. Whatever your affliction is, to sink into the interdependence. And so, so then how do you interact with an independent world? Is the same way you would interact with, if you were walking through a cancer ward. You feel tremendous compassion for people's illness. And because it's a profound illness of separation and illusion that will lead to the malady of suffering. That's what you do. And then you just have whatever cover you have. For example, my cover is, when I go out in public, I have learned this trick. This is how I conceal myself. I say, tell me about yourself. People are happy. I can leave a 3.5 hour meeting not having said anything, and nobody noticed that I didn't talk about myself. So you don't ever really have to worry that people are going to find out about, unless you're me, and you're like in front of people like this. But like, with my hairdresser or whatever, like nobody knows anything about me, except for things like, oh, I have free food, the things that you can talk about in that world. So I don't lie. I just let them talk about themselves. And then it's great. I find out tons of information. Every now and then I'll sneak in a little, oh, well, you could try this, a very light version. And oh my God, they're so titillated. And then we go. And then I have my Sangha, find your kind. And then that's where I express. And so I genuinely think that, I was just looking in the New York Times, and there's all these new polyamory things that are coming out. This is what they're looking for. This is, that's, and so people are looking now. We've hit such a devastating such devastating statistics around marriage, around kids. And by the way, I'm just going to say this. I'm going to go really hard today. Okay. Like, look, we have kids in orphanages. Like, I think people should, I'm not going to be Chairman Mao or anything, but Like, we should not be allowed to have children until we take care of our children. That's the problem of an independent thinking world, is we don't understand all of these kids are all of ours, as are all of the animals in the SPCAs. We go to the store to buy the dog. Anyway, so yeah, so in exchange for mini me, or in exchange for a reflection of my ego, which happens in independent relationships of any kind, you have an interdependent reality. You get all the bliss and all of the arousal. And the only thing is that you step into the truth that everything is yours to tend to and to care for, which overwhelms people sometimes. But that's the truth. Everything is yours to tend to and care for. And how do you do that? Well, here's the tricky part, and then I'll stop. You find a way to sneak arousal into people, because that's going to be the only thing that heals them. You're going to have finite solutions until people have their own arousal, which is the natural healing source always. And so you progressively, incrementally increase people's arousal, so that they hit a point, bing, where they have a flash. Wait a minute, this is what freedom feels like. I might do this without someone having to drag me. I might actually, without, ooh, what would, I might actually actively choose to move into the direction of arousal, because that's the only place I'm ever going to get what I want. There we go. look at my Rachel.
We'll take a few reflections. Go ahead and raise your Zoom hand or send in a reflection online. And we will start with the land.
Hi, Nicole. I love what you said. Hi. I would love what you were saying about the resistance. It's like when I call it hesitation, when I know a direction I need to go in, and that hesitation, and I like kind of sit at the doorway and don't go through it. And it was reminding me of when I needed to speak, that I wanted to leave my marriage. And I'm like, once I say that, this whole world will occur and I'll enter a whole new place. And so I find that is happening currently. So I'm at a doorway ready to go through it. And and I don't want to force myself. And I also don't want to, I want to do it. So I think I think all the threads that you're bringing through with all the teachings from this current time, I feel like I'm able to link through a little bit more easily than I have been before. And I think sisterhood is definitely the key to help me thread the needle to cross that threshold. So, I just appreciate, and I don't want to be like too brave or like have to muster courage or anything like that. I want to see if I can go through it with like precision, choice, with arousal.
Right.
With arousal, yeah.
May Vajrayogini pull you through without any obstacles. That's my prayer for you. Just gently or harshly, whatever, passionately, that's what I mean. Gently or passionately pull you through in such a way that you don't have to think about it for a second, and you're drawn rather than having to do any of the action.
I love that. Thank you.
We'll go to Kara next.
I just had a big aha moment with that last thing, the last bomb you just dropped about sneak arousal in until they have their own, until they choose it. And just like the type of aha moment that of breath in my body and tears in my eyes. And it's just beautiful.
And then we got some from online.
Uh-huh.
We have Kaylee from Instagram. She says,
Kaylee.
such an enriching talk today, anchored in flight by Find Your Kind, and just the isness that we can only play with our kind and that they are out here. So much clarity and arousal.
That's beautiful. Just a minute. I think I saw Rachel Cain had one, and I heard she's coming out of a,
We'll go to Rachel.
hibernation. And so we want to give her some food now that she's out of the cave. Go ahead.
That was more than food. That was a whole banquet. That was
Look at her. Look at how beautiful she looks. She is. We are very clear she's out. What were you saying now?
I said that was more than a morsel. That was a banquet, and that was amazing. And I appreciate all the arousal.
Beautiful, beautiful woman. It is so good to see you. All right. We'll see you. Wait, we won't see you tomorrow. I don't think. Yeah, we won't. Tomorrow's Thursday. Okay, we will see you on Friday.